Timi Akapo. I'm a partner at Advocate Law Practice in Lagos. I head the Telecommunications, Media and Technology Practice Group of the firm.
You're currently at the wrap-up day of MWC Africa 2023, where the cream of the mobile ecosystem across Africa and beyond is gathered like they do annually. What are some of the lessons and learnings that you've been able to get out of this event?
Okay, so I think the first thing that sort of stands out in this year's event is the fact that even though it's called Mobile World Congress, there's clearly opportunity for sister services, products and services that are related to telecom services. There's quite a few service providers here who have taken up space to project some of their product and services, and some of them are not core telecom services. So, for example, there's a digital health summit that is going on, as well as there's a 5G summit that's going on. So, what stands out for me this year is the fact that even though telecoms, as they say, is the infrastructure of infrastructure, a lot of things are built on it, but there's now opportunity here for all those other things that are built on telecoms to project those services and people to have conversations around those services and how they impact our socio-economic lives and also impact economies of countries. So for me, that's a major standout in this year's event.
Coming closer home, the Nigerian Communications Commission recently threw open the mobile virtual network operator licensing space with the release of the framework guiding that licensing category, as well as the commencement of issuance of licenses. At the last count, we've seen about 48 firms indicate interest in that space by acquiring licenses across various categories. From your deep knowledge of that space, the telecom space in Nigeria, what do you think has sparked the interest for MVNO licenses in Nigeria?
Okay, so I think that in Nigeria, what is clear is that any opportunity in the telecom landscape in Nigeria is considered as a very, very good opportunity because of the successes of the current operators in Nigeria. So if whenever NCC says, we're about to issue licenses in particular areas or particular categories, there's always a huge amount of interest. You will see from aggregator licenses that were issued, and so the same with these MVNO licenses. Now, I think it is also important for people to be able to properly assess what they can do with those licenses, right? Because like you mentioned, there's about 40-something of those licenses that have been issued. I think, as usual, there's a rush. As usual, there's a rush to apply and receive those licenses without a lot of thoughts going into how they will operationalize those licenses. So, and it's good that you're asking this question because last week Friday, we organized a workshop titled Operationalizing Mobile Virtual Networks in Nigeria. What we tried to do at that workshop was to bring all the stakeholders in the industry, particularly in this space, together. So we had the head of licensing of the NCC. The keynote address was given by the Executive Commissioner Stakeholder Management, Barrister Adeleke Adewolu. So Mr. Usman Maman, who is the head of licensing, gave a presentation. I gave a presentation on the legal and contractual considerations that people need to take into consideration when they're doing this thing, when they are operationalizing. There was a technology provider who talked about technologies that are required to operationalize the license. Then we also had a Tier 5 license operator who also came to give their perspectives in relation to how to roll out, the challenges, what they're seeing now, the obstacles that they're already encountering. The workshop itself gave everybody an opportunity to sort of just sit down and look at a lot of the issues that needs to be surmounted for the successful operation of MVNOs. A couple of things came out. One of the questions that were asked, for example, was around whether, so people who got it, so it's in 5 tiers. So there's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5. So somebody asked the question, can I upgrade from tier 2 to tier 5? Now, this is a license that was issued less than a year ago. You have not rolled out. So clearly, there was not much thought that went into applying for a tier 2 license, because you have not even started operations. And you're already talking about upgrading, because they've seen the opportunities that are available in a tier 3 license or a tier 4 license. So if you have done your homework, for example, you will not be asking to upgrade a few months after you have been issued, and then the regulator is expecting you to roll out in a couple of months. There are all sorts of issues. People raised issues around FX challenges, because you can't run away from it. If you are importing equipment, you have to pay in dollars. And those are not issues that started yesterday. These are issues that have consistently been there. A lot of people are talking about a pricing framework, which is fundamental for the relationship between MVNOs and MNOs. The request now is that the NCC should intervene and announce a pricing framework so that they can start talking. A lot of the discussions now can only get to the next level where there's a pricing framework that is acceptable to the MVNOs and also to the MNOs. We know that right now the MNOs, I'm not going to allow somebody onto my network unless the terms are favorable. That is the reality of things. They've expended a lot of money, invested money in the networks. But then also, the law says that they have to talk to them. The framework is very clear. They need to come to a satisfactory commercial arrangement. The regulator would only intervene if they are unable to come to that commercial arrangement. And we know how it is. Once the regulator intervenes, both parties don't have a choice. But it now looks like everybody's waiting for the regulator to intervene, which I'm not so sure if that is the best approach. But if that is what people are left with, then they have to do it. So what's my point? I think everybody needs to get a good deal out of all of this. But currently, there's a lot of uncertainty. People in tier 1 don't know whether they should be talking to the MNOs directly or they should be talking to the tier 5 operators, so that they go together and meet the MNO to get satisfactory contractual terms. One of the important points that I made at that workshop was that a lot of people are focusing on the contract between the MVNO and the MNO, whereas there are a lot of issues that you still need to consider when you are operationalizing the license. The contract with the MNO is only one. You still need to come up with innovative products and services. You need to understand the limitations of the tier or the segment that you are operating. And for a lot of people, it does not look like that is clear at the moment. But I'm hoping, and this is a point that I made repeatedly to people, when initiatives like this succeed, everybody makes money. When initiatives like this fail, investors become worried, and then we lose investors coming to Nigeria and all that. So it has to work. Even if it comes to the 40-something plus MVNOs margin, it has to work, and it is key for everybody to just accept that and start working together.
Okay, talking about making this work, you did hint at the likelihood of the regulator's intervention, ultimately. But let's begin from the outset of the initiative itself. If you look at the framework, some of the pecs that the regulator has put forward is some discussion around or some promises of subsidy provision or subsidy consideration for the MVNOs who would also be operating in rural and areas that are currently underserved by the incumbent mobile operators. So the question then becomes that, is subsidy enough to spark interest in this licensing?
Okay, so I think it is important to first of all point out that the subsidy itself is not available to all the tiers. So if you are in a particular segment, it is not automatic that you will get the subsidy. It is only those who intend to deploy services in unserved or underserved areas. So if you are in Ikeja or in the middle of Lagos, forget about subsidy, you will not be entitled to it. But let's say you go to the hinterlands and also the ones in tiers 1, 2, 3, I am not sure they will be able, because of the limitations in their license, I'm not sure they will be able to do that. But tiers 4 and 5 are encouraged to set up operations in those areas. We know how subsidy regimes, how they operate. Usually, access to the subsidy itself is not as a matter of course. You need to meet certain obligations. You need to fulfill certain requirements. And people that have applied for subsidies in previous years will tell you that this is not so easy. But I think that it is an incentive that is still there. The opportunity is still there. As long as people are ready and willing to meet the requirements for accessing those subsidies. Now, I would not advise a prudent businessman to build his business model on a subsidy. You yourself, you must be ready with your resources to roll out. The subsidy, as it sounds, is a subsidy. It cannot be the basis for you building your business model. But when you are not able to access it, it makes your rollout, it makes your profitability a lot easier. But the important thing is that it is there and people can access it once they meet the necessary requirements.
Final question: what do you foresee as the MVNO outlook for Nigeria?
I think it will succeed, basically because of what I've seen from the tiers 3, 4, and 5 players who have shown interest. They are already talking to technology providers. Some of them are already talking about financing, particularly the tiers 4 and 5, because they see themselves as providing services to the tiers 1, 2, 3. They see themselves as operating almost on the same level as an MNO, but without spectrum. So a lot of them are ready. I'm talking about the tiers 4 and 5. They are ready to invest in their network. And once they are able to invest in their network, I'm sure some of them can take 10, 15 or more lower tier operators. So I expect that there will be some level of success. But I also expect that there will be a lot that will fall by the wayside. Because as I've said, it does not appear that some people put a lot of thoughts into applying for the licenses. So I see it as being successful, but I can assure you in 2-3 years time, not all the 40-something plus would still be around to provide services.
Is there anything we've left out you may want to add before we shut down?
Just generally that, I think these initiatives, when they come from the NCC, they're always coming from a good place. It is now left for us as stakeholders to ensure that we work together to make them work. So the MNOs, the MVNOs, whatever tier you are, everybody needs to see, as I said, we can all make money, but we need to work together and we need to be fair to each other. And that's why I'm not sure we should allow the NCC to always intervene every time there's an issue. We should be able to sort it out and it will be successful.